About that time, we'll call the meeting to order. So we have everyone present with the exception of Mark Schody is not here this afternoon. On approval of today's agenda, we have one change there. Item 4.1, the Well at Work Clinic tour, that will not be happening, so we need to remove that due to provider unavailability. So we need to remove that from the agenda. Anything else, changes to the agenda at all or additions?
I don't know if you want to formally make the addition on the discussion on the April or March 21st board meeting. You can do that either way.
Okay, board's wishes, do you want to add that as an agenda item?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so motion
Approve the agenda as amended.
and a second.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, then under action items, 3.1, approval of the integration grant, Mary Jo Dorman.
Mary Jo is not here, it doesn't look like. So I'll cover that quick, unless you have any information you want to share with it. Basically, there's no significant changes to the integration grant. There's an MDE deadline that it needs to be approved by. And so normally we would probably put this in the consent. So we're asking for approval of that. If you want to move it to the bottom and wait till she shows up and see if she has a little more insight, you could do that as well. Either way.
Do you maybe have questions or want more information? Perfect timing.
Oh, come on, you're up. I've been delaying for you.
Not a problem at all.
I'm just here as the procedure to renew the integration grant for the third year. It's a 3-year grant. We will be heading into the third year next year. We're not making any changes to it, so it's more just a action item of approval to accept the integration grant for the year 16-17. Any questions?
All right, so we need a motion to approve that item. Okay, second? Okay, Linda? Okay. Any other discussion or questions? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Jo.
The hip slowed me up.
Then under study session items, so 4.1 we've removed. 4.2 licensed staff shortage, Jim Querum and Kathy Nebor.
Good afternoon. One of the issues, oh, you're getting me too. Wow, special. One of the issues that you're hearing a lot about is a licensed teacher shortage. And so Kathy and I are here tonight to talk a little bit about the big picture of the state and where that's at, and then focus that down to where we are in Albert Lea and what that looks like. So we'll just jump right into it. The MDE was required by state statute to do a supply and demand report for teacher licensure areas, and this was to be completed in 2015. So they looked at data up through 2012, and I think it's 165 pages. I think if you boiled it down, these two quotes give you a good basis for a summary. The first one basically says we have less teachers coming out of school, right? And the other one says basically of those coming out, in many areas, there is not a significant shortage, but in some areas, there is a severe shortage almost. And I'll talk about what those are. We're very consistent with what the state looks like as far as our shortage areas. I think there's more challenges in outstate than there is in the metro area. there's more people that want to be there probably than want to be out here. And because of that, we have to work a little bit harder at pulling in people in certain areas. So I think the second one really lays that out. While the specific teacher licensure areas experience shortage remain the same, the percentage of districts indicating that it's difficult or impossible to hire qualified teachers is almost doubled. So what does that look like for us? First, sort of a historical perspective, licensed staff numbers. This actually surprised me a little bit as I looked at this. I looked at the last 13 or last 23, 24 years of data that we have. When I started, 1993, we had 254 FTEs in the district, licensed staff, right? That's just that's licensed teachers. In 2009, when Mike started, there were 239. We're up to 277. That is the most FTEs of licensed staff, full-time equivalents, that we've had since I've been in the district. I think that says something about some of the programming we have. You know, we have an ATPPS program that there's half-time teachers that half of their day is there. I think it says something for not only the teachers that, and Kathy was a part of the teacher bargaining unit then that was instrumental in that whole ATPPS program, but also going out after and lobbying for state and federal grants that allow us to do other things with licensed staff besides just be in the classroom, although that's part of it. And Kathy, maybe you could elaborate a little bit on that.
Sure. You just approved the integration grant, which allows us to do some, offer some other opportunities that aren't even listed in licensed staff, and that's our success coaches. We are one of the lucky districts that gets compensatory pilot revenue grant dollars. Mary Jo spends a lot of time on state and federal grants. She does a lot of work on that. And writes them well, and they are very targeted towards different staff performing in different roles. And oftentimes we get asked, well, why don't you put that position so you could potentially reduce maybe a class size over here? But know that, as we've said many times, that those grant dollars have to be used in very targeted and specific ways. So when we look at that 277 FTE, I think that's significant that we can add lots of targeted interventions for students in our elementaries, in our middle school, in our high school. And I'll talk probably in the future a little bit about how those will evolve a little bit with ATPPS and some recent discussions. So.
Jim, to give the board some perspective, any idea what the student population was in 1993?
I was looking for that data just before the meeting as I looked at this. I know it was more. I'm guessing when I started, there was probably around 400 kids in a grade at the high school, wouldn't you say? High 300s, 400 somewhere. Now we're 220, 240.
Our senior class has 200, and I think 240 is probably closer to the average.
Right. So really what you have is more FTEs, so we're hiring more teachers. We're trying to maintain and retain more teachers with less students, which I think is a great thing, but kind of gives you a historical perspective there.
Jim, one quick question too.
Yeah.
Of the FTEs, the added ones, how many are basically mandated? Are most of those positions, or is there some that we've added with special programs, like the success coaches and things like that?
Well, it's success coaches wouldn't even be included in here because they're not licensed teachers. I'm not sure when you say mandated, I think, you know, it's based upon, you know, we're looking at class size and then we divide that up based upon how many FTEs to hit a certain class size number, it's particularly in the elementary. But like Kathy said, we do have quite a few more interventionists, title teachers, extra things for targeted services than we've probably had forever. It used to be, as many of you know, education was a kind of a fits all years ago. Now it's becoming much more targeted and specialized for that individual student or that population. And our population is just a whole lot more diverse. So I don't think that probably answers your question specifically, but.
Well, I mean, obviously that gives the insight on why we're adding more, because
Sure.
like I said, we're diversifying.
Yep. Okay, so to give you a perspective of the kind of the scope of the issue for us, I guess, is one of the pieces of data that I thought would help give you an idea of what we're looking at as far as hard to find licensure areas is to look at the number of variances. So in other words, if we have somebody that has a valid teaching license and they are interested in a position, but we have no one that can fill it with the right license, we will ask the Board of Teaching, MDE, if we can get a variance and allow them to teach on a variance. And variances and waivers come in different forms, and some are 3 years, some are 1 year, and I won't go into all that, but this gives you an idea of the number of variances that we have asked for, including in our ALC, the total numbers over the last 3 years. And I didn't list all of them, like there's 29 this last year. I didn't list all of them in there, but I had Jen put in the major ones that we're looking for. And you can see some trends there: special ed, ESL, foreign language. Even this last year, we had a community expert license in 14-15 for English. Science can be a hard one to fill because science is quirky. There's about 5 different licensures, and you can only teach certain classes with that licensure. And depending upon the size of your school, you might have to have somebody that has 3 different science licensures to teach all the classes you want. So from year to year, that can be an issue as well. So that gives you kind of the scope of it as far as variances go. And then also we look at other things, like if we can't fill it with a licensed person, some of the specialty areas under special services like speech language pathologists or school psychologists, we fill with contracted people. If anybody wants a job out there, I think speech and language pathologists, you could find any district in the state probably, and there's probably an opening. There's nobody out there. They seem to get sucked up by private companies and that like to contract with schools. So those are some additional ones that we filled in other ways other than in a variance. So that gives you an idea on locally. So, if I was to put some of these things down, here are what some of the current issues are. Special ed, obviously, special ed is one of those that requires something beyond your bachelor's degree. And so it's additional to get your licensure. So in most cases, I think there's maybe one school that meets all the requirements, but most of them are beyond that. Speech and language, school psychologists are ones that, although there isn't a lot of them, we only have like 2 school psychologists, they're hard to fill. Speech and language, we have several and they're hard to fill. Another issue is the procedures and requirements for people that are coming from out of state. The good news there is that from this report that I referenced, they are making changes to streamline that and to speed that up and not have somebody take, it used to be like 5 additional classes or something before they could get a Minnesota license. I don't think it won't be that way anymore. Try to speed that up to make it easier for Wisconsin and Iowa and the Dakota graduates to be able to come to Minnesota and teach. So that's good, but that's still an issue. The state test for teachers is the MTLE, and the passage rate is not great. We have some people that we will hire with only the test left to pass, and they'll fail, for instance, the reading portion, and then they'll fail it again, and then they'll fail it again. And so the state lacks that to where you can teach your first year until you pass it, but you have to get it passed. So that helps a little bit too, that it isn't a barrier to hire them, but it's just one of those things they're addressing. I think another big barrier for us, for us as a district, and I think a lot of places in the state, is just the budget process delay, where we're trying to get all our staffing set by April 15th, right? But if the legislature isn't where they should be, or very rarely ever is, to where we know what the budget's going to look like, we don't know what the state budget's going to be or what we're exactly going to get. We don't know what we're going to get in federal dollars or ADSIS dollars or all the other title stuff. So we've always been conservative, and if a position is funded by one of those streams of money, then we've non-renewed people to make it fair to them to go look for another job, and because we don't know what we're gonna have coming back as far as money is concerned. So I think the budget process, the way the state has it, is a barrier as well. And another one that gets brought up quite often, actually, I always ask this question with new teachers the first day. How many of you looked for housing in town and didn't think any of it was adequate, so you went outside of the district or outside of the community to look for housing? And every year I'll get for sure one, maybe two, some years four. So I think that's an issue as well. I think the city has heard that, but that is one that I've heard before too. And if you're a single person who grew up in the metro and you come down here and take a job and you can't find housing, then you're probably going to Owatonna or Faribault and you're gonna drive. And the next year when there's an open position, what are you gonna do? You might go back to the metro, right? So those are some of the things that we run into as well. Kathy, anything you want to add to that? So what have we done? Well, one of the things the state has done, besides what I've already mentioned on easing some of those teaching restrictions, they've also put in a student loan forgiveness program, and the federal government has one as well, particularly for those that have high poverty in their district. And I think I've seen more this year than I probably have in the last 3 years combined of those applications coming in from young staff. So I think that's good. We also always look at people in their licensed area and if they would be interested in getting another license that would alleviate an issue in our district. And Kathy can talk a little bit about that.
So really, Jeff Halverson behind me has done all the hard pounding the pavement this last couple of months with the Department of Ed and our vocational variances. So we are very fortunate for the most part to have licensed CTE or vocational teachers, but some of them don't have that hours of experience vocational piece of the license. And MDE has relaxed the guidelines, as it were, so we can get all of our teachers fully licensed, which really is a financial piece for us as the district to get those CTE classes then funded. And really, kudos to Jeff for all his work on that. We are heading out to 3 different education career fairs. Mary Jo Dorman, Steve Kovach, and Diane Schultz were in Iowa this last week. And there is a career fair up in the cities that a few people are going to attend, and then myself and Mark and some other folks are heading back to Iowa in a few weeks. So trying to kind of cover the bases and explore opportunities to find staff. One of the things the district has done is we've posted a generic teacher position so that we can encourage staff, even though we don't maybe know which positions will be open, they can start that AppleTrack process. We're working hard at strengthening our mentor-mentee program. We've talked a lot about it this year with our teaching and learning team. We know that a lot of teachers leave the profession in the first few years, and so we really need to support them. And we've had a mentor-mentee program for a couple of years. We've modified it. We've got an elementary piece and a secondary piece. This year, our new instructional coach roles are really supporting those new teachers. Amy Schumacher probably a few months ago spoke a lot about the work she does with not only first-year teachers, but first, second, and third-year teachers. And so we're looking to expand that through our ATPPS program. Again, next year, it'll look a little different. So what else draws people to the district? Well, we need to offer opportunities and incentives. And so we have career ladder positions in ATPPS. We know that sometimes teachers leave the teaching profession, but they want to stay in the district. I think between Jim and I, we've probably got 30 jobs in 30 years in the district. And those are really great opportunities and help grow individuals and keep them around. But we also need to consider, also our instructional coaches are gifted and talented. We've had a reading specialist in the past, and we now have a math specialist. So I think those opportunities really endear people in staying in the district and instead of maybe looking at a surrounding district. The other thing is we know that our Schedule C, which is part of the teacher contract, our coaching positions and our extracurricular positions really do draw people to the district. We have a head football coach position right now. We have 22 applicants in various stages of applying for that position. And we know that as I look through the list of what licensures those applicants bring to the district, elementary ed, EBD, LD, Phy Ed, health, science, social studies, chemistry, and even without those positions posted, we have people interested, and we know that head coaching positions really do draw people to our district. A couple years ago, we had a head girls basketball coach who was also a licensed counselor, and she really was looking for a position where there would be a head basketball coach. And so knowing that, we know that also there's some really good research out there now that teacher coaches really show some academic improvement when they're working in the schools. There's a nice report out of Florida that shows us that. So we really want the district to consider thinking about really coupling those coaching jobs with our job openings in addition to helping us retain teachers. Some of those applicants for the football coaching job are first and second year teachers. So they've got a year or two under their belt and they're looking to pursue some other activities. And we know that in a community this size, we really need to keep our young teachers engaged and involved, and some of them are involved in their church, and we know that some of them are involved in community activities. And we know that the ALEA strongly supports Schedule C. It's part of their contract, and would probably agree that they would like to see some of those positions opened up and available for licensed teachers who are working in the district to be a part of.
From putting my HR hat on, I think everything Kathy said is really good information. I think it's how we go about doing that. As she said, it's Schedule C. You know, Schedule A is year 1 salary, Schedule B is year 2 salary, and Schedule C is extra assignments. So it's always been part of the teacher bargaining unit. And we know, to summarize what Kathy said, that those are people that know the district, they know the buildings, they know the kids, and they have the professional education to make those kind of relationships. And from an HR standpoint, one of the things that I'm throwing out there is to look at those positions that do not have people that are not teachers in the positions, and what can we do to encourage, or as a board or as an administration, what can we do to try to get people in those positions that are licensed staff. And I think that would go a long ways, because tying those two together, I mean, we have people, you know, there's 22 applicants for the head football position. They're looking to be a football coach and a teacher. And tying those two together increases our chances of getting somebody that can do both and wants to be here. And that's what we want. So any questions on that?
Just had one question about, for those really difficult areas to fill, like you talked about special ed, speech pathology, school psychologist, and this certainly doesn't need to be a discussion item, but I think a food for thought about, is there a way we could look at some tuition reimbursement for current teachers who might be interested in getting licensed in one of those areas to potentially move into that? I think that may be another way that's an opportunity that's enticing to current teachers.
Sure. I think there's, talking with HR people around the state, everybody's scratching their head and going, what can we do? And I know some places, Austin has a pilot program, I think, that they're looking at that. I think they have a funding stream right by 90 that helps a little bit, but I think there's, I think we could look at anything as a potential in order to draw people here and to keep them. And so, yeah, I think that's something we could sure take a look at and see what's out there. But I think we're open to anything. I think wide reach of going to Iowa and Minnesota. I think we've had probably more interest in kids from Iowa coming up here to teach than we probably have within the state. You go up to the metro and you're competing with long lines with Eden Prairie and Minnetonka, and you might get a few names, but down there we get more. So we're going to continue to throw that net out there and see if we can draw some interest. So, okay, any questions on that?
Just a comment more than any question. I'm glad to hear that you're looking more seriously at the coaching aspect of the hires. I think it's important, and I don't think we're talking about the quality of the coaching that we have in place right now that are non-teachers. It just makes sense. I remember when I was in high school, when I was playing sports, when my coach walked down the hall, I changed. You know, if I was not doing what I should have been doing, I was when Coach Sturley was walking down the hall. But it was nice to be able to have that contact too during the day. So I think it's really important for us as a board to consider that. I don't know if you're looking for us to just do this or make something formal on that, but you know, I'd like us to move forward on that.
I think if you're looking at putting a process in place, at some point we would have to make it more formal with the board in looking at those positions that do not have people that have had some teaching experience, held a license at some point. Yep. So just kind of a summary. Is there a teacher shortage? Yes. But there's got to be a comment about there. It isn't in all areas. I think the pool is adequate in many areas. It would appear that the number of graduates coming out of school is somewhat steady but declining in some licensed areas. You know, if you're looking for elementary ed, phy ed, social studies, some of those, you're not going to have a problem getting a pool of applicants. It's going to be in those areas, some of them we mentioned before, where there is a severe shortage, particularly in the area of special ed, EL, and a few other core areas, but not to the extent that you find there. The other thing that we have to be, everybody's got to be better about because of the size of that pool, is how we market ourselves. So the more exposure you have as a district, the branding that you do as a district, getting your name out there, and have people know where Albert Lea is and what we're about, and that's important. And so we're doing our best to get out there and do that. The other thing that's encouraging is of all those waivers or variances that I listed, all of them have been approved over the last 3 years. 100% of all of them that we put in for. So I think, you know, the quality of people that we're getting is good, but also MDE is also understanding that in some areas there's just a real hard time finding some licensed teachers in that area, so they're approving those waivers. And then again, as I said, they're also looking at streamlining that whole idea of out-of-state license to make that easier, and that's going to help us. You know, we're only a half a circle. We're butted up against Iowa. And it's almost like, it has been almost like an invisible line that they can't come across, maybe because of barriers to licensure, and maybe because they're used to being in Iowa and that's all they know. And so we have to make it a whole circle, not just a half a circle, to draw people in. Kathy?
I just, one of the things that we're constantly thinking about, that marketing piece, and that's something that none of us went into education thinking we'd have to do. It's kind of like being involved with politics. We didn't really think 30-some years ago we'd have to be involved with politics. And so we're kind of all new to it, trying to be really positive and upfront about it. One of the things, and it was at the ATOD meeting with Jill, and we talked about, we know we're sending these groups of administrators out to hire staff. So what kinds of other things can we put in our portfolio of supports we have for teachers? Well, the county does do some really great things. We have a lot of organizations in the community that do things to support our schools. So just continuing to brainstorm ways to bring our message out to potential hires and to the community in general. But Brittany Voigt who came out of Community Ed, really doing a great job with promoting some of the work we're doing in the schools. But it's new for us. That's not, everybody said there's going to be thousands of teachers out there waiting for all of these baby boomers' jobs, and we're not seeing that in every area. So something we're working on.
And I would just emphasize something Kathy alluded to. I think probably more than ever before, the community and the school are combined, so the perception of the community is as important as the perception of the school, because you're selling the entire thing if they're gonna move here and make it their home, where maybe umpteen years ago, a lot of people got hired over the phone or a quick interview. I think when I got hired, there was an assistant principal, and that got hired the same day, and his wife was in the car, and the principal said, "Oh, she's licensed in what? Well, tell her to come in." And they hired her right there. I think those days are long gone, and so I think that marketing and branding piece is important, and both for the community and the school. Any questions of us?
All right, very good, thank you. Then under 4.3, the Albert Lee High School Academy update. So Mark and Jeff.
Good evening. We'll try to tag team this. We're in the early stages, even though we're 3/4 of the year through, gathering information on the academy, how it's working. From parents and students, we're seeing a lot of positive information. I'm not going to be able to give you a ton of data tonight because comparing what we did before and comparing now are like apples and oranges. But what we're seeing is increase in student achievement. We're seeing more kids being successful academically and socially in the school. We're hearing, like I said, a lot of positive things from parents. And so when we go through this, we'll be able to give you more data at the end of the school year, going into next fall, and of course the following year of how things are improving. One of the things Jeff did a lot of work on was working with Southwest last spring and finding students that were struggling academically. The program was to help kids academically, not so much with the behavior, but the academics. Jen Henschel, who is helping us this year, did a reading evaluation, and we have kids in our academy reading anywhere from the 3rd grade level to the 8th grade level. So it's a big span. So the work staff has done with the students has been remarkable, and we're having a lot of positive feedback. You know, in the beginning there was the, ooh, do I really want my student in it? And now it's more, hey, do they get to stay in 9th grade? What happens to 10th grade? And our goal with 10th grade was to get the kids to that pathway where they would be close to their peers so that they could compete for those courses and maybe move into the traditional or advanced courses. So we'll just give you some basic information and open up to questions at the end. So, oh, we have the clicker here, sorry. Last February we met with the board, and these were 3 things, and I'll share this with you later on so you can look at it closer. But one of the things was students being unsuccessful in 8th and 9th grade, and the number of kids having to either take mainly summer school to catch up on their 9th grade credits. Looking at getting to the board goal of 90% for graduation rate. Right now we're close but not close enough, and we should try to probably get to 100%. And then the whole idea of where's the support for kids? One of the things when students leave Southwest, come to the high school, in the past, they come to the high school and that middle school model's no longer there. And so some kids succeed really well. They're ready academically, socially, and then other kids struggle. And so basically creating the academy gave us another middle school model for kids that just weren't ready for that freedom at the high school. You can chime in whenever. We usually talk over each other. We pulled grades from what we have so far. One of the things that might not be shocking to you, but probably Jeff and I, is looking at the number of Fs that we saw first quarter. So we have just under 70 kids that are taking advantage of the academy right now.
Each grade.
Right?
Yeah, in each grade.
Right, in each grade. And so, you know, 7 failures out of 60 kids in 8th grade and 60 kids in 9th grade, that's a huge improvement. We can pull old data. It was on semesters and it won't be exactly the same. But if you look, One of the things, you know, the kids have every day, they're meeting with the teachers to see where they're behind, where do they need extra support. We found out this year that we based our academy model off of Northfield and some other schools, and we found out, they said, don't do math. Well, we're doing math right now because we found out kids struggle. So Jeff, working with the schedule, is able to free up a couple math teachers to provide that support. So going into next year, we'll look at that as part of the component of it, because ask a social studies teacher or English teacher maybe, and they're not able to do the algebra as well as a math teacher could.
And the grades you see up in front of you represent the 4 academy classes that the students participate in. So for example, their English, science, social studies, and then their foundations course. So it represents a snapshot for the first quarter for those 4 courses specific to each of the students that are in the academy program.
Then second quarter, maybe not as good overall, but I still think we're making some good strides with kids and helping them get closer to, especially in ninth grade when those credits count. Nothing more difficult for a ninth grader than spending the month of June or July.
Here you go, I got, this is from a presentation I did a year ago. Okay, 2013-14, go back a slide. In quarter 1, in 8th grade in 2013-14, we had 113 Fs. And in 9th grade, we had 91 Fs.
Was that all students
Yeah.
in the grade?
So,
Talk through
yeah, so we have 3 tracks that students in 8th and 9th grade are in right now. So we have the advanced track, which I would assume most of those students are very skilled academically, so we'd see very little, if any, and we can pull that data for you. Then we have the standard track, and then we have the academy. And so I would suspect our numbers, based on what Dr. Funk has given us, can't even come close to that. And if you'd go back and we pull student individual files, especially on our 9th grader, I would be surprised if some of our academy kids had failed every course last year, just because they didn't get the organizational skills. They didn't have someone reminding them, being there for them. Because as a 9th grader in our building, yeah, teachers care about you, but the best thing about the academy is they have the same 3 teachers, English, science, and social studies. So you have someone keeping an eye on you where, you know, because of the diversity of the district and size of things, there might be 3 teachers teaching 9th grade social studies, and they don't match up exactly with the English teachers, so.
One anecdotal example of what we're talking about going from the 8th grade to 9th grade, I spoke with a parent this afternoon, and she had referenced to me unsolicited about 2 months ago that she was very thankful for the academy program because she's really seen a turnaround in her student. And this was a student that I would see from a behavior and an attendance standpoint last year a fair amount, really struggling to stay on track, and after getting off track, really losing that motivation and feeling sunk. And one quote that I took from the conversation this afternoon is the student would say, she said, man, I'm doing better than I ever have. And I drilled down more into that statement, and the parent said basically, the student would say that the structure in allowing her to better organize her work and her materials and stay on top of getting after, you know, her business, shall we say, that was something that has been probably the biggest change, because we know the coursework is the same as the peers that are not in the academy program, but it's that structure and that focus support in that area of material and staying organized and that kind of thing.
The academy staff went to the students after first quarter and asked some general questions, getting their feedback from students. So, and like I said, I'll send this out to all of you so you can see the information, but, you know, have your overall grades improved? You know, how's the work flow going? You know, where's the support, attendance? And so one of the things the kids say is we feel more like a family. They feel really weird when we add a student to the academy. You know, we put structure in saying, okay, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. And then there's times when we have to use our professional judgment and say, hold it, you know, can we sneak a kid in here without disrupting what's going on? And one of the things the kids come back is, well, who's the new person? They know who the person is, but they're kind of getting into our group here. And our goal is to make sure these kids are able to be successful, gain their credits, gain the confidence, gain the skills. So when they get to ninth or 10th grade, they could jump right back into the, the standard track or the advanced track. And so, as I mentioned, the reading is the difficulty for some of them, and so it's very helpful to have a reading person helping out this year with this. Looking forward, one of the things is we need to follow progress. It'll be very interesting to see how many ninth grade students in academy, how they do in 10th grade. How do they do with their peers? I was in Diane Messa's regular class versus her academy class. Exact same lesson plan, just how she went about it, the speed she went, the depth she went. So the kids are getting the core information in the academy, and then they're working with them to be successful in that. Looking at the selection of students is always kind of a difficult situation. We look at their reading scores, and then we also look at teacher recommendations. Provide math support, we already mentioned that. And then one of the big things the board has helped us with, we always had targeted services, and I think we're using it better at the high school with our 8th graders, but also the after-school tutoring and the busing's huge. Kids will run down the hallway for that 4 o'clock bus. Either they were in credit recovery, or they're in after-school tutoring, or they're in targeted services. That's made a huge difference for kids. That we don't have the parents saying, well, I can't pick them up anymore. Nope. The bus is available at 4 o'clock, and you'll see kids, when's the bus coming? When's the bus coming? Did I miss the bus? And so that was a huge benefit the board provided us this year with the extra busing after school for those kids that wouldn't be able to come, or, of course, was an excuse of why I couldn't come, so. Questions the board have for Jeff or I?
Well, it's not a question, but I guess a comment. Working with that age kids for years, I agree that the F issue is huge because I would see 7 Fs on just one report card, not spread out among 70 kids. So, and the reason why generally was because they hadn't done their homework. So the 2 big pieces that I kind of see here are that they must be doing their homework along the way, which increases learning, makes them feel more confident. And then the other thing too, I saw that 90% said their attendance had increased. So those 2 pieces alone are major. If they're there in class, they're learning and they're doing their homework, they are able to just get more out of the class and be more efficient academically. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, keep up the great work. All right, then our next item is to go into closed session pursuant to Minnesota statute, section 13D.03, to discuss labor negotiations. It's an action item, so I need a motion to do that. Okay, second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.